Hi, my name is Tom Ryan, born in Massachusetts 74 years ago. And when I got out of the Navy, out of high school in 1950, I joined the Navy and done 20 years of honorable service with the Navy Seabees. And my first place to go was boot camp down in Newport, Rhode Island. And from there, I went to Little Creek, Virginia, and I was in the staff for a few months. And I always wanted to become a Seabee because I used to work with equipment and my hands and everything. And I put in a request to go to school to become a Seabee. So October 1st of 1951, I was a Seabee. I went to A school, graduated in February of 52, went back to the same base I just come from, Little Creek, Virginia, as in a different capacity because I was a Seabee then. And I made a couple of tours. I went up to Newfoundland, Labrador, Baffin Island, and Greenland for a 4-month tour on the ship. Then my first overseas duty, where I really stationed at, was over in Izmir, Turkey, on the Aegean Sea, on the west coast of Turkey. I was there for about 2 years. And they sent me to B school, back out in California again. I was happy to go to California. Then I went back to Davisville, Rhode Island in 1954, September of 54. And we went to Port Leoti, French Morocco. And I was an MCB 8 and relieved MCB 7, December the 7th, on the pier in Casablanca. We got on the ship to take them down from Port Leoti, and they got on our ship and sailed back to Davisville. And from there, in February of 55, I got transferred to this little island in Malta, 9 by 18. And I stayed there for a little over 2 years. And I enjoyed it. It was a wonderful place to be. The people were very nice. And in fact, I have a friend that lives here in Colorado with me that was over there same time I was. And then done my tour over Malta, and then I went up to the Naval Air Station in Brunswick, Maine, which wasn't too far from home, about 4 hours. Stayed there for 2.5 years, and right back to Little Creek, Virginia, back to a harbor defense unit. And what we did down there, we put buoys under the water in Chesapeake Bay. So if a cargo ship was coming through and they didn't give the right signal, we had people at the Army base at Fort Story, is all they would do is just press a button, and when those buoys would come up, and that ship would be going down. And after I left there, I went back up to Davisville again, and then I went to Bermuda, and then I went to NAS Sanford, Florida, which was pretty good duty. And then the highlight of my Navy career is I went to a little place over in Bangkok, Thailand, which is one of the best tours I ever had. Okay, I stayed in Bangkok until July of 65, and I reported to MCB 11 out in Port Hueneme, California.
You talked about going to A school and going to B school. What are those?
Okay, when you go to any A school, what you do is you learn the basics. For me, it was running heavy equipment, driving trucks, running a bulldozer, a motor grader, and things like that. And then when you go to a Class B school, you more or less hone in on maybe 1 or 2 pieces of equipment, so you're really an expert at it. And that was the difference between A and B school. And then when we went to C school, now C school is different. That only lasts about 6 weeks, and it's specialized. So when I went to C school out in California in 1961, I went to demolition school. Learned how to blow up bridges and things like that for 6 weeks, and it was really interesting. I didn't know what a stick of dynamite could do or all that, and you got to be real careful with it because boy, if you make one mistake, you're history. Yeah, and that's what I used to teach the guys that work for me. Safety first, man. That's the only way to do it.
Were accidents common? Were they a big problem?
Yeah, when we were over in Vietnam, they were, for the simple reason, you would try to blow a bridge up or blow some trees across the road, and sure in the heck, old Charlie was out there in the bushes trying to zing at you and things like that. So it was kind of hairy, but as long as you remember to keep your head down and the rest of your body down below, you could probably come out safe. I never had an accident with my crew whatsoever. And then January the 1st of 1966, we landed at Da Nang East over in Vietnam for my first tour. And I was there from January 1st of 66 until about the middle of September of 66. And then we rotated back to the States for 3 months of training and leave.
Tell us where you were and the enemy fire, the mountaintop, and the DMZ, and can you get into that a little bit?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. January 1st, 1966, went to Da Nang East. We relieved MCB Battalion. Now in October of 65, the VC overran our naval hospital, MCB 9, but they didn't get through, and MAG 16, which was a helicopter squadron for Marines, and they were right across the road from us. But the sad thing about it is these VC were running through the hallways, throwing satchel charges at all the people that couldn't even get out of bed, and we lost an awful lot of people in that hospital, and that was in October of 65. Wherever we were at, DMZ was probably 14 miles, 15 miles north of us. But the farther west you went on Route 9, going towards Khe Sanh, towards Laos, the road kind of angled up towards the northwest. So when we got to over to Khe Sanh, the DMZ was only 8 miles from where we were. And they had these 155s just like we had, and they would lob shells in there, and then they had 122 millimeter mortars that would shoot a mortar round about 6.5, 7 miles. And the jungle was so dense you could hardly see them. But they started using this Agent Orange over there, which was a big help to us around there. Because they went around the base out in the foliage and circled and took all the foliage off the trees for about a mile out into the jungle. And so Charlie really couldn't get that close to us because we could see him out there then. But the jungle was real dense up there, and you just wouldn't believe it until you actually see something like that.
Did you face many attacks on the base from infantry?
No, we didn't, but MCB 9 did. That's when they overrun the hospital, the Marine Corps helicopter base, and the Seabee base. They didn't run all over the Seabee base, but that was a big frontal attack.
Explain exactly what your brother battalion was. What was the situation there?
Well, they had the same home port that we did out in Port Hueneme, California. There was, MCB 3, 5, 9, 11, and then over in Davisville, Rhode Island, there was 1 and 2, 8 and 7, and then down in Gulfport, we had a couple of reserve battalions that come in, and I think there were 3 or 4 of them down there. I don't know the numbers now, but we always consider them our brothers. They got shot up pretty bad. They lost, in that raid on their camp, they lost, I think, 7 people. But they laid 92 of the VC on the wire out there. They never got through. Yeah. Yeah, MCB 9 got overrun in October of 65. We relieved MCB 9 in January of 66. Their tour was coming to an end. And the VC, they really hit us hard. And one thing about it that kind of sticks in my mind, they used to have a little boy down by the main gate that used to do our laundry. And boy, he said, hey Joe, do laundry, number one. And he used to do our laundry. When 9 was there, the same little boy was down there getting the guys' laundry to do and all that. And so when the VC hit us, one of the victims that was laying on the wire out there dead as a doornail was this little 7 or 8 year old kid. And in his pocket, he had a map of our camp, because he used to come into our camp. We knew what huts we'd tell him to go to. And he used to march everything off. So many steps here, so many steps there. And he had it in his pocket, and they found him on it. And then after that, when we relieved MCB 9, they couldn't come over on our side of the road to take our laundry. They still did our laundry, but they had to stay on the other side of the road. So, but that was the bad thing about it.
What about the civilian population there? Were you concerned that they were passing information to the VC, or did you have general level of trust with the civilians?
For South Vietnam, no trust whatsoever. I wouldn't trust them as far as I could throw them. Even when we would go down, our Seabee teams, you know, would build schools for them and everything like that for the Vietnamese. And you just couldn't trust them because they knew exactly what we were going to do and where we were going to be doing that, and they'd be in there waiting for us sometimes. You just couldn't trust them. And some of these, what they call advisors that come back, you know, how they train these South Vietnamese army, they were so scared you couldn't believe it. Yeah, because they were trying to get in the army in the daytime and be a VC at night. And they all wore black pajamas at night, so you couldn't see them very much. Big old straw hats. So, and one of my jobs over there was building the road up on this mountaintop called Monkey Mountain, because the Marines had a missile site up there. They had Hawk missiles up there. And I was up there for about 7 months, and then another man relieved me, and I left Da Nang around September, I guess, of 66. Stayed in there for 3 months. Now, we used to have in country in Vietnam, South Vietnam, we used to have these Seabee teams. There's 12 enlisted people and 1 officer. And what we would do, we would go out into the countryside and we would build a school for the local people, drill water wells for them, and things like that. But we lived in a compound right outside the town. And a lot of times they would lob mortars or see what would happen if they did charge us. And we have one man that was in my battalion before I got there, MCB 11. His name was Marvin Shields. He was a 3rd-class mechanic. And one night, they were in 1104 Seabee team. And one night, the VC attacked him. So anyways, he was wounded. He was shot 5 times, and he was wounded. But he kept hauling ammunition up for the guys on the wire to keep shooting. And finally, the VC ran away, and they called in helicopters. And they loaded him on a helicopter, and it was about an hour and 20-minute flight down to Saigon. And when he opened the door, he was dead. Yep.
Were there any other kind of engineering outfits, either Army or Air Force or any other kind of engineering outfits around your area? And did they have different kinds of duties than what the Seabees had?
I don't even like to mention them, but I will. Yes. Over in Vietnam, we had Air Force engineers, and I forget what they're called now, Red something. And then we had Army engineers, and they worked down towards the central part of South Vietnam all the way down to the Mekong Delta. That was where the Army was at. And basically, they do the same thing that we did. We build roads, hutches, fuel tanks, ammo dumps. South Vietnam is divided into 5 what they call corps, or let's just say counties so you understand it. And we were in I Corps, number 1. Then 2 further south, and 3, then 4, then 5. It goes right on down that way. And we were basically from Chu Lai to Khe Sanh, which was all I Corps. And then my second tour was in 65. We went over to a little town halfway between Khe Sanh, and to the east was Quang Tri. We went to a little place called Dong Ha, which was a resupply base for the Marines at Khe Sanh. And we were there 175 days. In 155 days, we had incoming mortars and rockets. we went to Dong Ha, where we built roads, housing for the Marines, a big ammo dump, so big you wouldn't believe it. And we worked on that for about 3 months. And as we were building parts of this ammo dump, the Marines would bring in ammunition and all kinds of shells. The day that we finished it was Labor Day, I think, '67. And 2 days later after that, the VC hit us with rockets and missiles, and there goes the ammunition dump. It went sky high for about 3 days. We lived in foxholes for about 3 days because these bombs and shells were just going off, and you didn't dare stand up because you didn't know when the next one was coming your way. Come back to the States, rotated for 3 months, and did my last tour in Vietnam was over in Quang Tri Province, which is right up on just south of the DMZ a little bit. And I used to unload barges full of rock. They crushed the rock down in Da Nang, and they shipped it up by barge to Dong Ha, and I would offload it onto these trucks who would put it on the road, make a good base for the roads. And I worked at night, and mortars and rockets and sniper fire all the time coming in on us, but luckily none of my crew or me got hurt. Oh, that was probably 7, maybe 8 miles below the DMZ, the militarized zone. And it's where Route 9 turns and goes west. It goes through Dong Ha, Camp Carroll, which was an artillery base for the Army up there, and then Khe Sanh, which was a base way out on the Laotian border that used to cover the Ho Chi Minh Trail.
In your words, we were talking about the DMZ. Why don't you tell us what DMZ is for the people that really don't understand that?
Okay, in 1953, when the French got run out of Vietnam over there, there was a peace treaty signed that there would be a North Vietnam and a South Vietnam. And it was a parallel line, supposedly a line that went across from seashore all the way over to the boundaries of Laos. That was called a DMZ. Nobody, not even North Vietnam or South Vietnam, would put any military equipment in there. It was just like an open spot. It was off base for everybody. But it didn't make any difference to them. And our favorite Secretary of Defense, Mr. McNamara, this was in '66.
McNamara?
Yeah, Robert McNamara. He was Secretary of Defense. And he came up with a brainy idea. This is where in down in Da Nang. We make these big, tall towers out of telephone poles, and they had a little place up on top where the guy could stand guard duty. So we built them, and they had these flying cranes come in, big helicopters, and they'd pick them up and they'd put them up next to on the south side of the DMZ. So these poor Marines could crawl up there and look out, see who was on the other side of the DMZ, because the DMZ wasn't really that wide. Some places it was. But the North Vietnamese thought this was great. Boy, this is target practice for us, because they could see these big old towers sticking up there. And we lost a lot of Marines for no reason whatsoever.
What Marine division was it that was in there with you?
3rd Marine Division. Yeah, the first general over there was General Krulik. And he stood probably, Jesus, I don't know, 5'10" or so. But when that man spoke, boy, you paid attention right now.
Were you attached to that Marine?
Oh yeah, we were always attached to the Marines. 3rd Marine Division. They took care of all of the I Corps. And there wasn't a night that went by that mortars didn't come in or something. In fact, when the C-130 come in and the C-123s, they never stopped. They landed, they opened the back door, rolled all the pallets out, and they took off, because as soon as they saw one of those big planes land, in come the rockets and mortars. So those pilots, I pray for them. They prayed every time they landed out there, because they knew something was going to happen, but they did a good job.
Were there anything that the Americans could do to at least fire back and keep the VC, knocked down a little bit, or deter them shooting at the planes?
Yeah, we did. We had mortars all around our base, but we didn't have any big ones. The biggest one we had was an 82 millimeter mortar, and that would shoot around about 4.5 miles, probably max. But they had these 122 Russian-made or Chinese-made mortars that go about 6.5, 7 miles, you know. But we always had guns. When an airplane was coming in with supplies, we always had helicopter gunships up in the air all the time. So if they had any incoming, you know, they could drop something on them or keep them pinned down or something. Yeah.
So the guys flying the planes in were not totally helpless, but it was still a dangerous situation.
It was, yeah. And then when those mortars go out there, no, we just had, I don't know if you're familiar with Martian matting, but this steel matting has holes in it. That's what you make the runways out of. Well, when those mortars come in, an 82 or a 122, it'd blow a hell of a hole in there. So we had a detachment of Seabees out at Quezon all the time, I don't know, 12 or 15. And if they hit that runway, we had to go out and cut the old stuff up that was all tangled, fill it with dirt, and put new matting down because the airplanes would come in just a few hours. So we kept it open for them just about all the time.
Can I ask a question? Would you expand on what you meant that the planes didn't stop when they came down and they didn't stop? What did that mean?
Well, they're C-130s and 123. They're cargo planes. And the back of them open up, and that's where the pallets come out. But what they do is they come down, and as soon as they landed, they slow the plane down. This ramp would come down. It doesn't come right all the way down. It comes just parallel with the ground. And they got a bunch of Army guys or Air Force guys, and just push these big pallets out. And it, you know, it's going slow enough, it didn't damage them too much. But then they have forklifts alongside the runway. Go out there and grab a hold of those pallets and get them off. So when the next plane come in, he would have room to, but they just drop them right on the run. Just real slow, and when the last pallet's out, they gun it, and away they go.
You were talking about the mats that you put down that was actually the runway. Was it the same kind of technology that they had in World War II, or had you improved on that a lot?
When we first got our first year there, it was identical to that. But they come up with a new kind. Instead of having all the holes in it, it was just, they were 2 feet wide, 2 by 8 by about 1.5 inches thick, metal planks what they were. And they did a much better job. They were easy to repair, and they weren't that hard to manhandle or anything like that. Yeah.
Made a little more safety too. You didn't have to spend as much time out there.
Yeah, that was the big thing, is being out there, because you don't know if that guy's just right behind the tree over there or not, trying to take a pop shot at you. Yeah.
Isn't that when you experienced the monsoon season and all your equipment got bogged down in that hole?
Yeah, see,
You want to tell us what you were doing and what happened?
no, our first real monsoon season was on my first tour in '66, and we weren't really sure what the monsoon season was. You know, you read about it, you hear stories about it, until you're actually in it, you really don't know how hard it can rain over there. In fact, if you were standing here, you probably couldn't see the street out there at Midway Boulevard, because it would be raining so hard. And you couldn't do nothing, because it's just nothing to do. So you worked on all your equipment. The rock crusher could run, make more rock, so we could put on the roads whenever the monsoon season was over with. But and it lasted, I think, probably 3.5 months. And then one day you wake up, the sun's out. Boy, the old steam is coming out of the ground from the sun, and it's stinking. You still got a lot of mud. You had to wait till it dried out. But
During this period of time, was there very little enemy action, or was there something going on?
always something going on. They never slowed down in the monsoon or nothing. In fact, the monsoon was better for them, because they could sneak through the underbrush. They knew where all these trails were. They would cut trees down and limbs and put these bushes over the trail. And we never saw them, but they knew exactly where they were. And they could sneak in, and you're hearing the rain pitter-patter up there on your roof and all that. And they could just sneak in, set their mortars up, and just lay a barrage down and go. And as soon as you heard the first rocket or mortar come in, you bailed out and went into your bunker. And you wasn't quite sure when that barrage is going to stop. If it stopped by the time you count to 25, then you can get out of there, then go out and man the lines, barbed wire around your compound, so in case they try to attack you. But the monsoon season was their plus.
Is this about, your career now is about coming to an end in Vietnam, and you're gonna be about ready to go back home?
Yeah.
Being,
My third tour of Quang Tri, I left, my birthday is January the 19th. We were leaving, flying out on the 15th of January. I said, boy, I'll be home for my birthday. But the 10th of January, 1969, the XO called me up and he said, Ryan, he says, I got a job for you to do. And I said, yes, sir, what is it? He said, I want you to take 5 men. We're going to go out to Quang Tri City and go north towards the DMZ. There's a self-propelled 155 cannon that fell off the road into a rice paddy. And I want you to go up there and get it out. So I did. The Army, it was an Army one, and we went out there and hooked up cables and pulleys and all that, you know. Finally, after about 2 hours, 2.5 hours, we got it out of there. But it was starting to get dark, you know. So I told that sergeant in charge, I said, Sarge, I said, you're on your own because we got to get out of here before it gets too dark. So we packed up all of our gear and drove back to our camp. We got back just as it was really getting dark. This 155 artillery, self-propelled, is just like on a tank track, you know, it goes out that way. But they were stuck in the bog, they just couldn't get out. But the reason we had to get out there before dark, because we were right on the very edge of Charlie Company, of Charlie Land. They own that land out there. And that 155 was traveling down the road where they shouldn't have been, and they slipped off the road. Now, if it was at night, and it was right on this river, if it was at night, Charlie would have nailed us. Because we only had about, see, I took out 5, 10, we probably only had between 18 and 20 people out there. And when the sun goes down, you don't want to be outside your base. Yeah. And then when you go down the road in the morning, you can't travel down the roads in the morning out there until the mine detector crew comes through. And then they'll give you, it's okay to travel the road. But at night, that's when Charlie puts all the mines down. And they had the same kind of explosives over there alongside the road that they have over there in Iraq. What do you call them? EIDs or IEDs, wherever they are. They find an old bomb or something and put a big cache of dynamite down there, and when a convoy would go by, and they boom, blow it up. And yeah, we had a lot of guys get Purple Hearts, but we didn't lose anybody my last tour over there. But yeah, at nighttime, you don't want to leave your base. And then on the 15th of January, 1969, I boarded the C-130 to Okinawa. Then from Okinawa, I flew on a commercial airliner into Point Mugu, California, right next to Port Whitney. And from there, I went to shore duty in Oak Harbor, Washington. Stayed on active duty until March the 1st, 1971.
when you were mustered out, what was your rating?
I was an E7, Chief Petty Officer.
Were you?
The rate, that's the rate that runs the Navy, and I don't care what other people say. And then I come back in '69, went to shore duty in Oak Harbor, Washington State. Stayed there for 2 years, retired, and stayed there and lived there for another 10 years before I moved to the wonderful little town of Broomfield, Colorado.
Do you see parallels between what we hear about today in Iraq, building facilities for people facing insurgent actions, facing artillery, mortars, things like that? Do you see a parallel between what you did there and what's happening today in Iraq?
Very much so. We're doing the same thing over there the Seabees are, and we're building roads and everything. But see, the media doesn't tell you the good things that we do, and they just tell you what's wrong with the war over there. But right now in Iraq, we probably got 12 to 1,300 Seabees over there, building schools, roads, bridges, And then we got about 600 down in Afghanistan right now, Seabees, doing the same thing. But we go into these small towns, hook up their electricity for them, get it running, put roads in. Water is the big thing, because when Hussein was down there, he poisoned all the wells and everything, so he just couldn't drink it. So we had to go way out from the city and drill these water wells down, and then run pipes and purification things in towards the town. And it was kind of hectic out there at times, and still is out there. Yeah, I'm proud of the era that I lived in.
It's sure good that there are career military guys, or where would this country be?
Geez, I don't know. Well, I tell you, that's and a lot of it, these young Marines that get killed, bless their souls. But the parents always come on and say, he always wanted to be a Marine, or he always wanted to be an Army guy. It's just so much that they want to do, and then you have our media trying to run them down and everything. It's just sad the way our country is.
Tom, if you had to look back on your career in the Navy, and if you had any philosophical thought or comment, would you like to offer something or not?
Well, I don't like to say this, but like I told you earlier, I graduated from Greenfield High School June the 15th of 1950. And then June 25th, you all remember, the Korean War started. And everybody thought it'd be over within 90 days, but it didn't work that way, So anyways, I had a friend that worked in our post office up there. And the first name was Bob, again, I think it was the last name. I said, Bob, would you let me know when people are starting getting their draft notices for the Army? Because I had two brothers in the Navy, so if you got to go in the Navy, you got a good place to sleep and 3 meals. So one day he called me up. He said, Tom, I think you ought to come up here and take a look at this letter I got. And I said, oh my God. He said, no, it's not for you, but I show you what they look like. He showed it from the Department of Army, Once he showed me that one, boy, I went over and enlisted in the Navy. November the 7th, 1950. Loved every day of it. A lot of people say, I don't know how you can stand it. How can you stay in the military for 20 years? I said, well, how can your dad work in a machine shop for 35 years before he retires? I only had to stay in for 20 years. I had a good time, met a lot of nice people, been to a lot of places, and all that. I've been in all 50 states. And I've been completely around the world. I went from Florida to California to Vietnam, then from Vietnam back to India, Saudi Arabia, Spain, Bermuda, and back to Charleston, South Carolina. So I made a complete tour around the world.
But it's no fun getting shot at. You saw a lot of that.
Yeah, we saw a lot of that. I think of it now, I'm probably just lucky that it worked out that way. I feel sorry for a lot of these Army and Marine guys that are getting hit or killed, but I never even thought of once in 20 years of going AWOL. That's how much I liked it, because I figured I was doing a good job and I was helping my country. I'm proud of it.